morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, February 15th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, joined by Steve Helwagen. Steve, I want to take a look at Ohio State's offensive line on today's show. Let's start with O-line coach Greg Studrawa. Now, the line didn't play up to par last season, and Coach Stud drew a lot of criticism from OSU fans. My question for you, how much of the O-line problems do you put on him last year, and how much of it was just youth and inexperience with guys like Isaiah Prince out there?
Man, that is a tough question just off the jump. I'm going to say that a lot of it had to do with youth and experience because they had 3 new starters. But at the same time, you know, you go back and you watch Michigan game and they gave up 8 sacks. And the only guy who did not give up a sack in that game was the left tackle, Jamarco Jones. To my feeling, he came through that game unscathed. You know, in the bowl game, Price and Elflein were getting beat like a rented mule at times. And you know, the offense just wasn't winning the battles. I mean, where they roughed up Alabama, you know, 3 years earlier or 2 years earlier, they were the team getting roughed up at the end of the year. And that was to me, a marked difference from what we had seen, and probably says as much as anything why they didn't win the national championship this past season is they just were not winning the battles up front, and I think that's part of it. Some of the skill position play obviously didn't help. The quarterback play was not what it needed to be, so it was a lot of things, but when you have breakdowns on the offensive line and they can't trust that you're going to protect the quarterback for 3 seconds, then it kind of limits what you can do. And teams were really locking in on Ohio State by the end of the year. And, you know, you look at Michael Jordan. I didn't hear his name a whole lot there at left guard. I think that he had, you know, kind of a freshman All-American type season, I would say. At right tackle, we all know that the troubles that Isaiah Prince had. And they went deep into camp before they ever anointed him. I mean, they said for sure Jamarco Jones was going to play after the spring game. They knew he was going to be the starter at left tackle, and I thought all along it would be Isaiah Prince because he was such a highly recruited prospect. But as it turned out, making that transition to being a full-time starter at the college level was harder for Prince than most people figured it was going to be. So that was big. But, yes, Studrawa, I mean, this is an important year for him. I mean, as we see, you know, Beck got 2 years, and it didn't work out very well. And Stud, I think, is going into his second year. He and Meyer are very tight. They go back a long way. But, again, you know, this is Ohio State. I just did the Bill King show, and he shared a story about Ed Warner after the loss to Clemson in the Orange Bowl several years ago, came up to him at the coaches convention and said Ohio State's the only place in the country where you can win 12 games and still feel like bleep. So, you know, that's just the landscape at Ohio State they expect at this point, along with Clemson and Alabama, to win it all every year.
You know, with Coach Stud, I think I'm with you. I think, you know, I need a little bit more information before I say it's his fault. If they have a porous offensive line again this year, then I think you have to put a lot of the blame on him because now they have 4 starters coming back. Plus they have reinforcements coming in, you know, good backups like Brandon Bowen, a couple of the freshmen coming in with Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis. Malcolm Pridgeon's now coming back. So they have the firepower now, in my opinion. Jamarco Jones, as you mentioned, really had a very good season as a first-year starter. He'll be even better as a second-year starter / senior. So we'll see. I think Coach Stud has to prove it this year. Hey, speaking of Malcolm Pridgeon, where do you see him factoring in this year, Steve? Do you think he will give Isaiah Prince a run for his money at right tackle? Do you think they might slide Pridgeon inside where he would take over at right guard? Just what do you see Malcolm Pridgeon's role being this fall?
My feeling is you have the opening at right guard because Billy Price is moving from right guard to center. And my feeling is they're going to do everything they can to get the best 5 guys out there. It's kind of the old Luke Fickell linebacker thing where we want the best 3 guys, or on the entire defense, the best 11, and whatever that combination is. So what they're going to do during the spring is they've got so many guys, you know, there. And Price needs to rep at center because he's never played the position. So where you'd think a guy with all of his experience would sit out half the spring, he's actually got to take, you know, a ton of reps because he's learning the center position. So that kind of limits a little bit in that flexibility and that moving guys around type thing. But I think that you're going to see Pridgeon rep at both guard and tackle, and the results are going to be apparent to everybody within the coaching staff at least, because they're going to have all 15 practices on tape and know what's going on in the strength and conditioning program, that they're going to know who the top 5 are. And they may or may not announce that at the end of spring practice. They probably will keep it open just to keep everybody hungry and working. I mean, you think about it, they watched Lyle and Kyle Trout walk away without even a thought. I mean, it was like, yes, definitely, there's the door, because we have plenty of depth. Was their feeling.
Steve, let me stop you there. So you're saying let me kind of paraphrase what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong. The Trout transfer and the Lyle transfer, their playing time at Ohio State not affected.
Unaffected, yes. So
that's right.
Yeah, we bring that up. J.D. Weatherspoon, out because of academics, playing time unaffected. So.
Dylan Thompson out for the season, playing time, unaffected.
Unaffected. So, that tells you right there that they're happy with the depth that they have on the offensive line, that they didn't give that a second thought as they were looking for areas to find scholarships. So they've got the depth. You put it out there, Demetrius Knox will be coming back, and he actually got back there in time to play in the bowl game a little bit. So, I want to see what he has. He's got to be hungry. Matt Burrell's got to be hungry. I mean, you got guys. I mean, you got Pridgeon. He didn't come to Ohio State to sit on the bench. So you've got options. And, the other thought is Price and Jones will be done after the upcoming season. So you're going to have 2 more openings the following year. So you really do need this to be a great offensive line year in terms of development and production.
Could not agree more. NFL Combine is coming up. It'll start 2 weeks from yesterday, so it'll start February 28th. It'll run through March 6th. Steve Helwagen will be there covering it as usual. 8 Buckeyes have been invited in alphabetical order. They are receiver Noah Brown, corner Garyon Conley, center Pat Elflein, safety Malik Hooker, although I don't think he's going to participate in anything other than interviews because of his injury, punter Cam Johnston, corner Marshawn Lattimore, linebacker Raekwon McMillan, and H-back Curtis Samuel. So not the 14 of last year when Ohio State just completely took over the combine and took over the draft, but still 8 representatives is still really good, Steve.
No question about it. And you think about it, in 2 years, 14 and then 8, that's 22 guys. That's an entire starting lineup, basically for
How about that?
a year cycle. Yeah, that they all went to the NFL Combine, and the results have been apparent on the field with national championship and then just 3 losses over the last 2 seasons. So these guys have done so much for Ohio State, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fit in. I think people believe Hooker, if he's healthy, is going to be a first-round safety, which is kind of rare. And then Lattimore and Conley are going to be first-round corners, which obviously says, people view them to be among the very best. McMillan is a guy that could creep in maybe in the late first round. Samuel, probably second or third round, and same with Pat Elflein, because he's shown he could play any of the 3 interior positions, guard, or center, so that helps his stock as well. And then you got Noah Brown figuring in there mid rounds probably or later. So I'll be excited to get out there. It's always a chance for me, to kind of rub shoulders with the Peter Kings and those type people, Adam Schefter and all those guys that come to the draft combine, and just kind of get the lay of the land about what people nationally think about Ohio State's guys and that type of thing. And I think Mel Kiper Jr. in particular are very bullish about what the Ohio State guys might be able to do. And when you look at Elliott and Bosa this past year, the seasons they had as rookies in the NFL, Ohio State is sending guys. And the same the wide receiver, Mike Thomas, he had a phenomenal year as well. So, up and down the line, I think people are bullish on what Ohio State's sending to the draft every year.
Let's close the show with some hoops. Ohio State lost at Michigan State last night, 74-66. Buckeyes dropped to 15-12 overall and 5-9 in Big Ten play. Alvin Ellis had 5 threes to begin the game for the Spartans. He finished with only 18 points, but he had 15 before you could blink. Steve, I think the bottom line is we can now pull the plug on any NCAA tournament talk with this team. That's my take. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the one thing that you have to keep in mind, if you want to be optimistic about this, is they have 3 home games in their last 4 games. Nebraska should be a winnable game. Wisconsin, probably not a winnable game, although Wisconsin has taken on some water here the last few weeks and had some losses. I think they lost at home to Northwestern the other day. At Penn State, that's a dangerous place to play. They've knocked off some people there. And then back home with Indiana, which is in a terrible tailspin right now. So the chance is there to go 3-1. They probably have to go 4-0. And then on top of that, probably have to go to Washington, D.C. and win 2 games at the very least. But my experience is if you're not in the tournament field going into the conference tournament, you do not play your way into the conference tournament without winning the conference tournament. That's kind of the way it is. So they are on the outside looking in, not even first 4 out, not even second 4 out right now. They'll be lucky to make the NIT at this rate right now, and that's probably about their speed. And the thing with last night, Dave, that was just so crushing. I mean, they have no margin for error. They put 5 starters on the court, and they bring Lyle off the bench, and all 6 of those guys have to be firing on every cylinder for them to win a game, and it didn't happen last night. Thompson fouled out, was terrible, got outworked by Ward. Tate, picked up, 3 fouls in the first half. They put him back in there with 2 fouls, and he ran right over a guy like he's a bull in a china shop. I mean, you can't do that. This is the end of his 3rd season, and he ought to know by now what he can and can't do. He got another foul for walking over and chucking Ward in the back, basically out of frustration. Those officials last night, if something happened away from the ball, they saw it. I mean, how many moving screens and everything else did they call? And then the other one's Cam Williams, 2 for 10. Again, he shot him right out of the game. And they have no margin for error. Those 3 guys, plus Lyle, plus Loving, who played very well. Those 2 guys kept them in it. Micah Potter played well. C.J. Jackson, just a role player. He had a few points, but again, they just don't have enough. That's what you come back to. And when you see freshmen like Bridges and Ward go off like they did, and Ellis shoot the way he did, and the Breslin Center, and Tom Izzo, and the 3 officials, and everything else, it ain't happening. So, I guess, sit back. We'll see what happens with Nebraska on Saturday, but this season has quickly gone by the boards.
Yeah, as you said, NIT bound if they're lucky. That's your slogan for the 2016-17 Ohio State basketball team. NIT bound if we're lucky. I think that kind of sums it up right there. Well, great stuff as always out of Steve Helwagen. Thank you very much for your wisdom, Steve. And thanks to all the listeners for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag. Best damn band in the land.